Bonjour from Paris. Have you heard of the Paris effect? It's basically when tourists come with unrealistic expectations of Paris, end up making mistakes, and then end up having to face the consequences. But lucky for you, we're here to help you avoid all of that. My name's Amelia, and I've spent the last 3 years in Paris studying all things French and taking as many pictures with the Eiffel Tower as is humanly possible. We're going to go through the biggest mistakes that tourists often make in Paris and how to make sure that you don't make them. So, on y va! Quick note, we know it's easy to make mistakes as a tourist. We've all been there, especially me. But don't worry, by the end of this video, you'll have the hang of it. Mistake number 1 is not learning some basic French phrases. A lot of tourists think they can come to Paris and survive solely on English. And while many Parisians do speak pretty good English, please keep in mind that you still need to learn some key French phrases to get around comfortably. It's not just a language barrier, it's also about respect. And showing Parisians that you spent a little bit of time learning their language for a visit, or at least trying to, goes a very long way. If you're not rude to Parisians, they won't be rude to you. Paris effect avoided. Unless you're gonna sit at Café de Four on a Saturday morning and then you're gonna get the attitude whether you speak French or English. Here are some key phrases worth learning. When walking into any establishment in Paris, you need to say bonjour or bonsoir, depending on the time of day. Bonjour. The same thing goes when you're asking someone for something. It's just like starting your introduction with hello. Bonjour means good day, bonsoir means good evening. You can be safe saying bonjour until about 5 or 6 p.m. and then you should switch it over to bonsoir when it gets dark. Next would be to ask the person that you're speaking to if they speak English. People may say no, but at least you tried. For this, you should say, parlez-vous anglais? This means, do you speak English? And if you're wondering how to let people know that you don't speak French, you can say, je ne parle pas français. And if you want to sound more local, which yes you do, drop the ne and say, je parle pas français. And the last phrase is when you're looking for something. To say where, you say où. After that, the choice is up to you. For the metro, you say, où est le métro? Where is the metro? And for the most part, you can replace the last part of that phrase with anything you like, because où est means where is. And don't forget to say merci when you're done, meaning thank you, merci, and pardon if you want to say excuse me, which you will be needing if you plan on getting the metro. I get it, Paris is a very big and exciting city, and I'm sure you've got a lot of the big attractions that you want to visit on your list. But the charm of Paris lies in the small details and the little in-between streets. Honestly, I cannot tell you how much better Paris is when you get off the tourist trail. It's so much better just to immerse yourself in the local culture. Some of my favorite spots in Paris are the ones that I found by just walking around neighborhoods. What this means is that instead of making specific bookings or reservations, you should give yourself a little bit of time just to be a flâneur or a flâneuse, which is somebody that will just casually stroll along to take in the beauty and the sights of Paris. This is why I recommend taking public transportation, because you can walk down some different streets and find little shops and restaurants that you may not have heard of otherwise. That being said, I know spontaneity may not work for everybody, and there's always a risk that you may walk into the world's worst cafe. So here are some things to keep in mind. You can probably trust that everywhere will have good wine. That being said, tourist areas will have the same wine for a higher price. So what I would usually do to find a good restaurant is by looking on The Fork, which is an app that you can get, or by looking on TripAdvisor. If it's got 4 stars or above, you'll be alright. It's probably a good place to eat. If you're looking for some areas to check out, there's this little block by Canal Saint-Martin with some shops and restaurants that you can visit. There's South Pigalle, known for its hip coffee shops and boutiques. And then there's Place de Vogue, which is a park in the Marais with a lot of cafes, restaurants, bars, and really cool galleries. In general, there's so much to see and do in Paris that will teach you so much more about French culture. We have an article on the Love in Paris website that tells you all the unique experiences that you can have in Paris, from making your own tote bag to designing your own perfume. And the link is in the description box below. I know how hard and overwhelming it is trying to remember everything you need to do before your big trip to Paris. But this is why we use our knowledge of Paris and travel to create this Paris trip checklist. You can get our Paris trip checklist, which is everything you need to do, buy, and book up to 10 months before your trip. So if you don't want to miss seeing the Mona Lisa or getting a spot at that restaurant you heard so much about, probably from TikTok, make sure to download our checklist. It's linked down below in the description. And let's carry on to the rest of the video. The Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, the Arc de Triomphe, your trip to Paris should not be a game of how many monuments you can fit in the shortest amount of time. I see so many tourists trying to stuff everything into one little itinerary, when really all they're seeing are landmarks. Landmarks are great, don't get me wrong, if you have the time and the energy, but the impression you'll be getting of Paris will not be authentic to the city. Ideally, try to only plan 1 or 2 large monuments or museums in one day. And a quick tip is to book any exhibitions 2 weeks in advance, even more if possible, just to make sure that you're definitely set. For some museums like the Rodin, you can walk in and just get a ticket, but for others like the Louvre, it's recommended to reserve a time slot beforehand. Tickets for the Louvre open 1 month in advance, but you can just get them a week or 2 weeks in advance and you'll be okay. Just a quick tip, don't let the 2 monuments you choose in one day be the Eiffel Tower and the Arc de Triomphe, because these 2 monuments are very stair heavy and the Arc de Triomphe has no option to use an elevator, and talk about sore legs. If you're from a country used to things being open all day, every day, this is the one mistake that you'll most likely make. In Paris, you might find that the hours are a bit shocking. People in France really push to ensure that they get 2 proper days off per week, which is why you may see shops close on Sunday and Monday. In high traffic and high tourist areas, you won't have a problem at all. But if you have doubts, Google has all the information. You will never be left without the essentials. Types of shops that will usually close on these days are boulangeries, grocery stores, and some little boutiques. When I first moved here, it was definitely a little bit of an adjustment, but now I'm kind of used to it and I can find everything that I need on any day. Museums, on the other hand, have Mondays closed, with the exception of the Louvre, which is closed on a Tuesday. So the busiest day to go to the Louvre is a Monday, so steer clear. Regardless of the day, lots of restaurants are closed between 3 and 6 p.m, and there is nothing more frustrating than being hungry and having nowhere be open. So make sure you plan your meals accordingly to avoid ending up at the McDo. Exceptions to the rule are many brasseries, but for me, unless I know the food is definitely good at one nearby, I wouldn't necessarily stumble across one and expect an amazing meal. By the way, in August, Paris can feel a little bit like a ghost town. You'll see notices in store windows that will let you know of people's closing dates, and even Paris's most notable ice cream shop, Bertillon, has closing dates in August, so you just need to plan accordingly. Paris is the capital of fashion, but that's not the reason why the next mistake that tourists make is that they pack wrong. There are 2 reasons why. Number 1, their clothes make them stand out to pickpocketers. Let me explain. So you can't necessarily stop yourself from getting pickpocketed. It really does happen to the best of us. That being said, there are things that you can definitely do if you want to blend in with the Parisians. I know Paris is associated with the beret, but in reality that is very far from what they really wear. And there is one clothing piece associated with Paris, and that is la marinière. That one really is a staple. On the whole, Parisians dress a lot more casually, i.e. the Parisian casual. A lot of tourists struggle with this sometimes, and unless they're going to the gym, you won't catch Parisians wearing athleisure. When you do spot athleisure in the city, it's usually just sweatpants and not matching sets. You'll see many jeans and t-shirts or jeans and a button-up shirt, while women also wear jeans with a blouse and flats. Heels aren't so common. The second reason I see tourists packing wrong is that carrying a lot of heavy luggage is very difficult in Paris. I've seen countless tourists with a plan to take heavy luggage from the airport using public transportation. But the Paris metro does not have many elevators, and often you'll struggle with the stairs. There are ways around this, such as taking the RER train or the bus, but even then, if it's crowded, it will definitely be a struggle. If you're on a strict budget, keep it light. If you're planning on coming with a lot of stuff, we recommend pre-booking a taxi with the trusted taxi service that we have linked down below. This leads me to another reason to keep your luggage to a minimum, is that the airport transport attracts a lot of thieves and pickpockets who ride these trains and buses from the airport purely to steal your bags, knowing that there are a lot of tourists. Lastly, Paris is an older city, and if you're on a budget, expect minimum floor space, so pack lightly or plan to pay more to size up. So what are you looking to know before your trip to Paris? Don't hesitate to leave us a comment so that we can keep on making videos that will help you live like a local during your stay. And if you think this video helped you avoid any mistakes, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Love on Paris YouTube for more travel tips and guides. And with that, I will say au revoir and see you in Paris.